we go. So we're on record. I'm hoping you can sort of follow some of these methods so that you can become a lot more focused and clear about how you feel. Can somebody put their mute on? Thank you. I'm hoping you can follow some of these methods to become much more focused and clear about how you feel, how you think, and how you can leverage sort of positive outcomes whilst you're working from home or are on furlough. You're probably feeling sat at home, very mixed emotions about the current situation. You know, I think that's really, really normal, and I'm hearing a lot of people feeling this at the moment. Things are changing. We don't know certainty of where things are going. And so, you know, negative emotions can take over quickly when we have the time to think. And being at home on our own, we have a lot of time to think. And watching the massive news that is just on top of us all the time, which, you know, it's not great. So I'm going to describe and get you to understand a little bit more about why we might become more paralyzed in our thinking, and can make you a little bit more vulnerable and uncomfortable. But this is really normal. You are not alone on this. So I'm going to ask you to change the process and pattern of your thinking today into something much more positive and constructive. So we're going to look at how we can reframe things that you might be thinking about things, and looking at a process to be able to do that. So let me just put the slide up for you while I just share this screen. I hope this works now. Okay. Aha, here we go. So as I say, my name's Jane Baker. So welcome. So our session today is about identifying key emotions, thoughts and behaviours that don't serve us well during this challenging time. I'm going to use some tools and techniques for daily reframing negative emotions, thoughts and behaviours into positive states. That's today. And I want you to use this and do it today, tomorrow, ready for then Thursday, so that we can start to look at sort of factors that are within our control and accept those that are not. And again, then I'll be giving you some more tools and techniques for creating that daily focus and direction to feel much more in control. And that's what we want to feel, is in control. Because I know, you know, everybody is in the same situation here, in that we don't know what is going to happen. So we need to be able to control ourselves, if not anybody else. Okay. So I'd like to start off with the thoughts around what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be looking at our thoughts. We're going to be thinking about situation. We're going to be looking at our thoughts. We're going to be looking at the feelings behind that, the behavior that impacts on those feelings, and the reactions and the physical reactions. And there's this sort of loop that tends to happen on how we see and how we look at a situation. So the whole process of today is to be able to reframe this into something really, really positive. So I want you now to do a little exercise for me. Now, obviously, hopefully no one's driving at the minute, you're all at home, so that's good. And I want you to do this exercise, and this will show you how you could be better informed about the choices you make through your mind. Because your mind is so powerful, it'll either make you do things in a positive frame or in a negative frame. So we're going to start this exercise. So close your eyes and imagine you have a big screen up in front of you. A big movie screen. Think of your favorite movie and put it up on that screen. Now I want you to turn the color up, make it brighter, make it clearer so that it is really, really vivid. Make the screen bigger. Make the sounds louder if you want to, so that it sounds amazingly crystal clear, or softer if you like it that way, but make it how you feel you want it to be, just at the right level for you. Make it 3D or panoramic if you want. Make it as big and as bold in front of you. And on the dial in front of you, turn it up and make it the best vivid sound picture that you can get for that amazing film that you love. Okay, so now I want you to clear the screen and open your eyes. Nice picture, huh? Okay, so now close your eyes. Bring that movie back up on the screen. Now I want you to make it in black and white. I want you to make it fuzzy, so you can't see the images properly. Make the screen much smaller so that it's really, really hard to see. And even make the sounds muffled so that it's hard to hear. Okay, so clear the screen and open your eyes. So just recognize, would you buy that second film? Probably not. And what is happening here is that, did your feelings change towards each of those pictures? So it's the same situation. So the idea is, I'm guessing you had a different feeling with both of these to make an informed choice and to make a decision of which was right for you. That decision, that strategy, probably would have been the first one. So your perceptions can get mixed up. Same picture, different perceptions about the same thing. So what we perceive is what we project, right? And this is where whatever we see on the screens in front of us on the telly, whatever we hear, whatever we look at, we start to have a different perception for different things. So I want you to just remember that one, because we're going to be using that a little bit later. So I want to explain to you why you may feel a certain way so that you understand how you can change. Let's go to the next one. This is a little picture of an iceberg, and it gives us a little bit of an idea about our mind. And I think it's important for you to understand how this works, because when you start doing a thought process that we're going to work on a little bit later, you'll understand where you're going into your subconscious and your conscious mind. So the conscious mind, this has basically, this iceberg, you can use as sort of a metaphor to understand the unconscious mind, its relationship to the conscious mind, and how the two parts of our mind can better work together. So we have two parts, obviously the conscious and the unconscious. As an iceberg floats in the water, the huge mass of it remains below the surface. We don't see that. You only portray what you are in your conscious mind. So only that small percentage of the whole iceberg is visible on the surface. So here we have the conscious mind, you know, it deals with our willpower, our long-term memory, our logic, and our critical thinking. We're doing this day by day. So this is what we do. The subconscious, however, has 90% of our thinking. Our beliefs, our emotions, habits, values, protective reactions, long-term memories, imagination, and intuition, all sit underneath the iceberg. So we need to look at this and think about how the unconscious mind will drive the emotion. It starts to mentally rehearse how you want to perform by picturing. It constantly is supported by the unconscious resources. Just think of all the things you know how to do without conscious awareness. So your conscious mind, if you drive, you use over 30 specific skills without being aware of them. These are skills, not facts. They're processes requiring intelligence, decision making, and training. So this conscious mind is really powerful, but it only has 10%. It's associated with our thinking, analysing and making judgments and decisions. So we will make these decisions very quickly based on what we're thinking. But it's actively sorting and filtering its perceptions, right? Because only so much information can reside in the consciousness at once. Only 10%. Everything else falls back below the waterline into the unconscious level. What is amazing about this conscious mind is that we can only take in 7 bits of information at any one time, which is quite scary, really. Plus or minus 2, it can be held consciously. Everything else we are thinking, feeling, perceiving now, along with all our memories, remain in the unconscious level until called into the consciousness, or until raising up and sort of spontaneously. So the unconscious mind holds all our awareness that's not presently in the conscious. Memories, feelings, thoughts that are outside of the conscious awareness are by sort of definition that unconscious. It's really, really important that you understand that it handles all of the responsibility for keeping the body running well. So unconsciously, our heartbeat, blood pressure, digestion, the endocrine system, and the nervous system. And it has the memory of every event we've ever experienced. And it puts it in little filing cabinets, put away for when it needs it. So it's the source and the storehouse of all our emotions. And this is the really important part, because we draw on that when we are in perhaps this fight type of mode. So in the middle of this sort of iceberg, right at that waterline, is where we imagine and dream. So this is a two-way communication between the unconscious and the conscious mind. So communication is two-way. The conscious mind can also use the medium of this imagination to communicate with the unconscious. It sends suggestions about what it wants through the imagination to the unconscious. It imagines things, and we subconsciously, the subconscious intelligences work to make this happen. So we might look at something with our conscious mind. It looks down into the subconscious to find that emotion and bring it up and to make some sort of decision. So those suggestions can be words, feelings, or images. And so athletes often use these things to mentally rehearse how they want to perform by picturing themselves successfully completing their competition. This is where sort of visioning starts to come in. So they're accessing into that middle layer, so to see that they're successfully completing that competition. So a tennis player may see a tennis ball striking the racket just the right spot, at just the perfect moment. Studies show that this form of imaging improves performance. So why am I telling you this? Well, the unconscious mind uses the imagination to communicate with the conscious mind far more often than the other way around. So new ideas, sort of hunches, daydreams and intuitions come from the unconscious to the unconscious mind through the medium of the imagination. But what actually happens is that the unconscious will always drive the emotion. So what does that mean to us? Because the unconscious mind will always win. So it always, always wins, no matter what. So if you're having feelings of anxiety and fear, it's constantly causing you upset, you're operating in the emotional part of that brain. So the secret for success for you at the moment is how to manage that emotional part of the brain at the unconscious level. So let me explain quickly about the area behind our eyes, which is the primitive brain, called the amygdala. So this acts on instinct. So when stress makes you feel strong, I want to take you off here a minute, and I'm going to stop the share because I want to show you this. This is now the amygdala. This is where everything goes from the conscious and the unconscious for their emotions, and where things start to react. So under normal circumstances, your fight, flight, fight response happens. So in normal circumstances, your conscious mind might pick up something and go, oh, that's happening. And it starts to open and it starts to go like this. And it's constantly doing this, releasing hormones to the body, ready for fight, fight, flight. Usually that's fine. But when things start to get a little bit out of hand and the amygdala starts hijacking that emotion, going into the unconscious starts to go, no, I want to help you. It opens up massively and it starts doing this. So imagine when you're sat at home and you're sitting there and that fear starts getting hold of you, that anxiety starts holding you strong, instead of it going down back to normality. So if I threw that at you, you'd have that fight, 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 but then it would finish. What happens is sometimes we get into this position where we're taking on that emotion and it starts to hold, and it holds right out there and it fixes. This is not really serving us well. This is not really serving us well. What we're trying to do is release that emotion so that it becomes a lot more useful to replace it with something else. But what happens is when we become paralyzed, we're right out there. This amygdala starts sending signals out and releasing hormones, you know, the stress hormones, and we can get really frozen at this point. So I want you to really imagine this as something in your brain which is constantly doing this. And if you are in a state of emotion, of anxiety, where you're out like that constantly, we need to release that. So some of the processes today that I'm going to show you will hopefully help you to bring that back down, and it's constantly just moving like this. Okay. Let me go back to the share screen. Okay, phew, that worked. So you have a choice on this, and this is the interesting part, because when we're feeling in this really, really paralyzed state, you feel you don't have a choice, but you actually do. Because remember the exercise of the film we did a little bit earlier? It was the same picture, but you had a different outcome. That was because we were going behind into our states. So into our states where we can look at the picture from a different viewpoint, and which will change how our emotions start to work. You had a choice in your mind how you wanted to feel. So we can interrupt that pattern of thinking into something much, much more positive, much more positive. So what I want you to do is we're going to look at this thing called a thought monitoring form. And this is about reframing emotions so that we come out of this, something that may be happening to you, a situation. Maybe you're at home and you're feeling really, really anxious. Maybe you are thinking of, you know, what is going to happen in the future. All of these things, you know, can get on top of us and get us into this really stuck feeling. And so we're going to reframe this using this form. So I'm going to take you through this form, and I would suggest that every day, if you can, start using this. It's a very, very useful piece of information to be able to move things forward. So the first thing is, let's do this now. Let's put it down on paper. So I want you to think of a situation that you're in, perhaps now, perhaps in the morning, a situation where you can recognize when your emotional brain is hijacking you with thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that you don't want to have. Where you're just feeling, this isn't great. So write down a situation at this moment about what that is. Okay? Let me go to the next one. You may get up in the morning, feel anxious for no reason. You might be trying to sort out the kids and get angry. You might be trying to get on the computer and feel frustrated. And, just start to notice when that situation is, where it's starting to hijack and it keeps going. Do you remember the thing where it's opening up? When is it not going down? When is it keeping you out very, large, where it stops you from doing other things? This form is really, really useful to make you feel, to be able to push you out of that into something different. So think of the situation. So let's go to the next one. Now, close your eyes and think of that situation and recognize that feeling right now and name it. Write it down. And a really good way of doing that is to just close your eyes. When something happens, just close your eyes and just recognize that feeling that is associated with that situation. Recognize where it is in the body. Is it in the chest? Is it in the gut? Is it in the stomach? Where is it? Is it in the throat? Just be aware of that feeling and acknowledge that feeling. That is really important, to acknowledge the feeling when you are in that situation, because sometimes our unconscious mind will try and skip it because it's trying to keep you in this really big fight, flight, fright sort of situation that you're in, and it just wants to protect you, but it's not doing a really good job because it stops you from doing everything else. So just write the feeling down and acknowledge that feeling. That's all you need to do. Okay, so the next one, associated with that situation, I want you to really now think about, what are those thoughts that are coming up for you? It could be, there's lots of different types of thought processes that we have and that what we filter. So we could have this sort of black and white thinking, things, I can't do this, I never do anything right. Yeah, it's either right or wrong. Just be very aware of the type of thinking, negative thinking you are coming up with and what you're telling yourself. Your mind reading. Oh, they think I'm stupid. I know they can do better than me. You might be sat at home trying to get on to a meeting or something and telling yourself this. This starts to fuel the emotion. Crystal ball gazing. There's no point in even trying. I know I'm not going to get the job done anyway. Yeah, you've already given yourself permission that you're not going to do it. So we need to understand that whether, what type of that is. Overgeneralization. This relationship didn't work out. I'm never going to meet someone. So that ever, it's never going to work. It's never going to happen. Disqualifying the positive. Well, I might be a disemployee, but anybody can do that. So it's putting yourself down. Overreacting. My colleague hasn't replied to my text in 3 hours. She hates me. Nobody likes me. Nobody. It's like a real sort of, again, going back to that black and white thinking. It's very black and white. And just, realizing that these thoughts have such consequences. So unrealistic expectations. I have to get this report right. Nothing less is good enough. So, all of these things. I mean, catastrophizing is a really big one. things are happening at the minute, I can't work. So we start to snowball. I'm going to lose my house, my family, my life is ruined, right? So capture that thought. I really want you to capture that thought against the emotion that you've written down previously. So I hope everybody's got a particular thought about a particular situation with a particular emotion. Okay, so here we go. So the next part is looking at your beliefs, which is behind the thought. Really look at that thought of what you're saying to yourself. So it might be something along the lines of, you know, well, I don't feel I'm good enough. Oh God, I'm stupid. I don't trust others. Things will never get better. The world is hopeless. Other people are better than me. Really capture those beliefs, because sometimes our beliefs can develop into a cycle. And, you know, this is really, really not helpful. You know, you can develop both the positive and negative belief cycle. And this cycle is where we start to form habits as a result of behaving in a certain way. And these habits then become a lot of self-doubt. So it's important to identify what our beliefs are. And once we know what they are, we can reflect on them so they can influence our thoughts, feelings, how we behave, and so on. So again, for that particular situation, for that particular emotion, really, really start to understand what is the belief behind that. Okay. And that is really, really important. So I hope you're writing these down. Now, this is the interesting bit, because this is where we need to shift. We need to shift this thought processes very quickly. And when you write it down, it's much more powerful than when you're just saying it to yourself in your head, because you start to think about it in a very, there's a lot of research about writing this stuff down. So now I want you to close your eyes and I want you to externalize this process. And I want you to think about, on your left shoulder, imagine your negative critter that is telling you these things of, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, and the thought processes that are coming out from that. Okay. So on your left shoulder sits your negative critter. And I want you to give it a name, because it's not part of you. You can let emotions go. You can let all of this, it's not part of you. You can control this. So sit your negative critter on your left shoulder and give it a name. I wouldn't like to tell you what my negative critter's called because it's quite rude. So you can give it any name you like, right? So on your right shoulder is going to be sitting your positive friend, your ally, who is then who's really out for you, who's the one who's your best mate, or who your best companion, who knows you really well. Give it a name. And I want you to argue against every negative thought and belief that comes in. So if you had a negative thought coming in that's saying, so this negative thought, this critter is going, oh, you know, you can't do that. You're not good enough. You can't be confident. You're not worthy. You know, whatever that belief is behind the thought that you've written down. Now, the interesting part is when you start to externalize it, it becomes easier to argue. Because this is the point where your friend on your right shoulder is going to argue against your negative critter. They are going to come up with a load of stuff and saying, oh, actually, that's not right because you've got this, this, and this. So what evidence can your ally actually give you? Because when we start to go into these negative thoughts, I can't do this, I never do anything right. Okay, so we go back to that. Let's take that example. The negative critter is saying, oh, you're no good, you can't do anything, you always get it wrong. Yeah. So I want you then to think about what your ally would say to that negative critter. Actually, no, you don't. You know, if you remember last week, you did X, Y, and Z. You did, you did that spreadsheet really well, whatever that might be. I may be a decent employee, but anybody can do that. Okay, so again, what does that say about you? What is a belief behind that? Well, a belief might be that you don't feel worthy or not good enough. Yeah. So that might be your positive ally coming in and saying, well, actually, no, not everybody can do that. You have this skill, you have that skill, you have, bring in the evidence that is going to associate with that. Really, really important. Let's do another one. I can't work, I'll lose the house, my family, my life is ruined. Okay, so, this is really catastrophizing everything. And yeah, things are tough at the minute. Okay, but what is your positive ally on your shoulder? Actually, is that correct? Well, probably not. Will you lose your house? Probably not. You can put things in place. Actually, my family, we're all still all together. My life isn't actually ruined because, I'm not out in India on the streets. So it's about putting things back in perspective for you that are going to allow you to give you the evidence that you need. So take a little moment to do that dispute and close your eyes. It's really important to bring that out and let these two argue the things out between them. That way it starts to move and shift things out. And the most important thing of all is, from that, what actions can you take right now today to provide your critter and to prove it that it's wrong? You want to be able to take one action. So from the sheet at the beginning, you can take this off this PowerPoint and you can use it. And I would advise that you use this every day, even for small things, because it really, really will help you to reframe those negative things. Okay, so let me come back out. So we talked a little bit about reframing there, reframing the mind into a much more positive sort of mindset of being able to do things differently, that you will be able to take action. Without action will mean that you will stay where you are, because the mind needs to have some reinforcement that things are happening. Now I want you to, finally for this, I want you to recognize the emotion that you had on that situation. And I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think of where that emotion is in the body. Close your eyes and just think of where that emotion might be. Let's think anxiety. So anxiety may be sitting in the chest here. And I want you to give it a bit of a colour. Maybe it's red, maybe it's yellow. And just allow that anxiety and think of that colour. If you want to give it a shape, give it a shape. I want you to turn that anxiety, that colour, that shape, and I want you to turn that colour into black and white. In your mind, visualise that colour down. Make it smaller and smaller and smaller. Bringing that anxiety smaller and smaller. Bringing that colour smaller and smaller, the black and white, making it more distant, making it less clear, until it disappears. And then I want you to fill your chest with a colour that you associate with calm, or whatever emotion that is opposite for you from anxiety. And fill that chest with that colour and allow it to expand and turn the dial up like we did with the film. That will just shift that again into something different. So these are little techniques you can use today. And what I would suggest is that you start to use this every day when you get up. Think of the situation, think of what you're feeling, and just do this thought monitoring form. Sit and just scan your body for that emotion and shift that in motion and put something else in place. Okay, so I'm going to open up for any questions at the minute. So if you wanted to unmute and come and ask if there are any questions that you want to talk about from this little half hour. No? No questions? Who would use this thought monitoring form? Does anybody would think that this would be quite useful for them? Nobody wants to speak.
Yeah, they're all a really quiet bunch, to be fair. Hope you're well. Thought that was really, really good, actually. Different insight to things, different perspective of looking at things. Thank you for that. I'm sure somebody else will come on now that I've broke the ice, but thank you indeed for that. It was good. I'm looking forward to Thursday.
Okay. So thanks, Mike. What I'd like, you've got the opportunity here to think about, what are those biggest sort of things that are going on for you at the moment? What are the biggest fears, so that for the next session, perhaps we can really tailor those into to help you even more into what we can control and what we can't control, and how we can then bring in some sort of ideas of ways forward for that for you. What are the biggest fears for everybody at the minute?
I think, Jane, it's probably uncertainty.
Yeah, not knowing what's going to happen and how long it's going to last.
Yeah, and I guess that's something we can't control, isn't it?
Definitely. Nobody can.
No, but we can control our own emotions and thoughts around what we can do. And this is why this thought monitoring process is very useful for when you're sat at home going, oh, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do in the future. So it's about, okay, start reframing that into how we can change that to now, about what you can actually do. Use the two sort of shoulders to start arguing those thoughts and reframing it into, and more importantly, it's about getting action. If you don't give yourself some action to do from a positive sort of thought process, then nothing will change. Again, this is back to your choice, because your emotions back into that amygdala, as I said, this thing, will remain out here. So we need, it is about that choice. And it's easy to go, well, I can't do anything about it. Yeah, no, you can't on the bigger scale of it. And we will talk about that next time. But there are things you can do on a day-by-day basis. So I would really urge you to use that process for the next 2 days and notice the difference for you. This is used a lot in what they call cognitive behavioral therapy, for people who need to shift their emotions and thought processes into something more constructive to move forward. Yeah, we can't get back into work, and that is the reality of it at the moment. We're all stuck. As a business, I'm stuck. So we have to think of alternative things, of ways around it. And it's easy to blame other things and sit there and do nothing. But it's not going to do us any good for these emotions. It's not going to do us any good for this. It's going to be sticking right out here. So you can shift that by bringing it back down into a bit more of a control for you. Anybody else want to think of anything that they, like to share, or, at home? I know the uncertainty is really, really big. Is there anything else? No? Okay.
I guess just one question, Jane. When you're trying to control those emotions and you've got your amygdala and it's exploded,
yeah,
I guess that's something that, doesn't always go down straight away. Is it something you may have to do a couple of times?
So our brain is based on sort of repetition. So it's about getting a habit. It's brain-based habits. So if we do it once, brilliant, but it's not just going to work once. It's like, when I talked about the athlete, they use a lot of this stuff for performance because they train their brain to almost rehearse that the best way forward for them. So bringing in that right emotion, touching in and making that emotion in a positive state is something they train themselves to do. So doing it once is not going to work. Yeah. It's, it's like that repetition, when driving a car, you have to learn, you have to learn, you have to learn, and suddenly it just clicks and it goes into this unconscious sort of level where you don't even have to think about it. Again, it takes effort and time for you to be able to do this. But don't doubt that it doesn't work, because it does. But you have to put the effort in. And as I said, it's your choice to be able to do that. So doing it a daily ritual of getting up, maybe it's in the morning when you're feeling, notice when you are feeling that time when you're feeling a little bit lower or a little bit anxious about things, or feeling worried that, the furlong's going on for a very long time, and use this form to bring yourself back into training your brain into being more positive. So the answer is you need to do it more than once.
Yeah.
Is that useful?
Yeah.
It starts to become a normal. It starts to become a habit once you start doing it all the time. It flips it out of this. It just flips it out of that being stuck right out there. It loosens it out. If you don't loosen it out, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to bring it down to here. So, yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Hi, Severin.
Hello. You said positive actions. What exactly would that entail then? Would that be just a different exercise or something that takes your mind off things?
So let's say...
because obviously the furlough we don't have any control over, so...
Okay, so you're maybe, well, if you'd like to sort of perhaps so your thought process will bring up something. So let's go back to the slides and I'll show you. Hold on. Okay, so when your right shoulder, your positive friend, your ally, is arguing against that negative belief. So the negative belief, right? So might be, one of these negative thoughts. Would you like to share a particular negative thought that you might have, or shall I just give an example?
Probably best just to give an example.
Okay. Okay, so I can't even do this, I never do anything right. So black and white thinking, right?
Yeah.
So you write that down. And behind that belief, I mean, I don't know what that belief would be, is maybe I'm not good enough, right? So that it depends on the situation as well. So if the situation was you were doing a presentation and the thought process behind it was, I'm not good enough, and the emotion is fear, perhaps, or anxiety, then you might say, I don't feel good enough. You would externalize that. Your negative critter would say, you're not good enough, you're rubbish, you can't do anything, you always get things wrong. Yeah. The other side of you is going, actually, no, you don't. You did a presentation before, or, you know, you find some evidence that actually mitigates what this negative critter is saying. So the evidence then, you know, is really useful. So the actions out of that might be that, okay, so you might feel anxious, but perhaps what would make you feel better would be to practice that presentation with someone. Or it might be to get some feedback from someone else about how they think you do your presentations, or whatever that might be. Or it might be, you know, to learn some visualization exercises that will help you feel more positive when you go in to do these presentations. So the actions are related to the actual thought processes and the situation that you're in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, so thank you. It really depends on what is going on. I mean, you know, an action, it's got to shift you forward out of that place that you're feeling stuck. One small, even if it's one small action, because one small action will really shift that mind into something a little bit different. Okay? Try it, because every time you do, let's think of driving that car, right? When you're first driving that car and you're learning, you have to keep repeating, and you have to do another action, right? I'm going to do it better this time. So this time I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, or, you know, this time I'm going to reverse better around a corner, or whatever that might be. It's about practicing and putting little actions that are small. Make them small, because if you put big actions in place, you're not going to do them, because they become too big. And what happens then is your mind goes into this catastrophizing of, oh my God, this is useless, I can't do this because, and we go back into that circle. So little actions that you can achieve is going to be better than being paralyzed in an emotion and an anxiety that is stopping you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's lovely.
Okay, so is there anything else? I'm amazed you've all got on here, actually.
78 people, Jane. Thank you.
That's okay, but you know, please practice this for the next 2 days until we speak on Thursday, and work with it, and just do it whenever you feel that negative, you know, whenever you feel like, oh, what is that situation? Write it down, put them in that sort of process that I've given you, and I'll send either Nick or Karen this this video so that you can go back over it and have a little look, or the presentation, or whatever, you know, whatever's easier for you. Okay. And you know, if there's anything else that you would want to work with on Thursday, you know, please pass it to Nick or Karen, and so I can incorporate that to try and help you. Okay. But I thought this was a good starting point for us to really notice what that sort of thought process and how that impacts you massively. So we need to shift it. And you have control over that. You do have control over your own thoughts, and you can change that. However small it might feel at the moment, you are then doing something to help yourself. Okay? So I think I'll close it there. and thank you for listening and letting me babble on about things, but I'm hoping you've got something out of it. So is there anything else, Nick, that we want to talk about? Or
No, I think you've covered it, Jane. Thanks. We'll get the video sent out and look forward to Thursday.
okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. Okay,
Thanks, everyone.
Jane.
you take care.
Jane.
Bye.